accusing her of inflaming racial tensions by linking the shooting of the Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson to her activism, when the police have said there's absolutely no connection to her activism with Black Lives Matter. Now, I happen to think that some of her activism with Black Lives Matter was quite extreme. I wasn't a fan of a lot of the political goals that she had, a lot of the political objectives she was calling for. But obviously that doesn't mean to say for a moment that I don't wish her the best of health. I hope that she recovers quickly and I hope that she recovers fully. But when the police themselves say that there is absolutely no link to be made to racism, it was not a targeted attack, why is an MP doing this? Why is an MP making this connection? She made it in a tweet that she sent yesterday morning, and then when she appeared on Newsnight last night, she doubled down on that tweet. Let's hear what she had to say when she was talking to Emily Maitlis.
I know this evening, a little earlier, Diane, you were accused of inflaming racial tension. When you made a connection between the shooting of Sasha Johnson with her activism, with her party take the initiative.
But it was her party in its very first statement about this, which mentioned the fact that she'd had a series of death threats. And, you know, when...
The shooting wasn't connected to that. I think everyone involved has said we shouldn't be jumping to...
But, you know, Emily, when a person of colour is attacked for raising issues to do with race, that doesn't take the debate further forward. If people are inflamed...
But not when she was shot.
If people are inflamed about race in this country, you need to look at the underlying issues. My friend and colleague, David Lamont, did an exhaustive report about how black people are treated in the criminal justice system.
So Diane is saying, essentially, you can make this connection because somewhere along the lines it was connected to race.
I'm not saying you can make that connection. I'm saying that when you attack a person of colour for raising issues to do with race and claiming somehow it's their fault, that isn't very helpful.
Nobody said it was their fault at all, but they didn't understand why you'd taken facts that didn't add up and attributed the shooting, which everyone else has not connected, with her activism.
Well, they clearly didn't read the statement put out by her political party, first of all, which linked
Diane Abbott,
to
as you can hear there, is linking it to the death threats, saying that the Black Lives Matter movement linked it to the death threats. Let's talk now to the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and find out what he thinks about this. She is a prominent Black Lives Matter activist, Sasha Johnson. She had, as far as Black Lives Matter are saying, even though the police can't find any credible evidence at the moment, but let's take it as true that she received death threats due to her activism, due to, it might be said, not that it excuses it, but some of the more extreme measures she was calling for as well. Very controversial figure. Though the police say that there is no connection thus far, that this is some sort of targeted attack on her, does that not mean, though, that Diane Abbott has the right to make that connection because she was an activist? Or is Diane Abbott inflaming racial tensions?
I'm very sorry to say that it's the latter. I'm very disappointed in Diane Abbott. She's not the best of politicians at the best of times, but to go this far is out of order. It's irresponsible to draw a connection between the horrible incident that's happened to Sasha Johnson and to her political activism. And like you said, you know, I feel sorry for Sasha and her family, and I pray for them. I hope that she recovers. But just because she's been an activist in the Black Lives Matter campaign does not mean that the incident was to do with that at all. And for Diane Abbott to draw those conclusions was wrong.
Well, Diane Abbott is saying, look, if people are inflamed about race, we need to look at the underlying issues. And that's, I guess, what she's saying that she's doing. I mean, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here because I think I know where you stand on this, and I'm finding it even difficult myself, because when the police have expressly said that there's no connection, but because she is a Black Lives Matter activist, does that mean, well, look, race should always be on the agenda when something like this happens?
Well, there's two sides to that. So, Diane Abbott is saying racial tensions are inflamed and the conversation needs to be had. But I would say that the reason racial tensions are inflamed is because of people like her race baiting on this topic all the time. And, the new YouGov polls came out today and showed that more people are now saying that race relations in this country have worsened since the Black Lives Matter protests or riots, whatever you want to call them. So the whole movement has been counterproductive and made things worse for race relations in this country. And that's people like Sasha Johnson and like Diane Abbott who keep shoveling this woke narrative of critical race theory down our throats, this constant argument that white people are oppressors and black people are victims. And we know that not to be true, but that's the line that they take. And for Diane Abbott to double down in the way she did, the clip you just played was horrendous. I hadn't heard that part. So I'd seen her tweet. I hadn't heard that clip. And she's saying you can't criticize her for talking about race because she's a person of color. Well, that's not what we're criticizing her for. We're criticizing her for linking this horrible shooting to the Black Lives Matter activism. And she's conflating two different situations in order to make political points. That's disgusting and irresponsible. And someone in her shoes, someone of her esteem, should not be doing that.
Well, she connected this to the David Lammy report, which again, it's difficult to see any connection here. And the police themselves have said that there is no connection, that it was targeted, no evidence that it was targeted, that it was essentially nothing to do with her activism. But I was asking, are the issues with racism that someone like Diane Abbott has experienced, being one of the first black female MP in the Houses of Parliament, she's received an absolutely horrific amount of abuse. I don't think anyone can deny that. Do you think that for some people like Diane Abbott, the wounds are so deep when it comes to racism that will always be a reaction of hers, and maybe we should be a little bit more understanding? It's something that as a white person perhaps I won't ever understand. What do you say to that?
I don't buy into that. I'm sorry. And racism is awful and no one should have to experience it. But having experienced it myself, I don't think it's okay to say, well, just because I've experienced racism in the past, every incident I look at now is a racist situation. And what happened to Sasha Johnson was really, really awful. And nobody should get shot in this country. It's absolutely outrageous that happened. But to just assume that it was down to racism and or down to her race activism is irresponsible of someone in that house, in the Houses of Parliament, to do. And she should know better. It is race baiting, and on an epic scale. And I don't think people like Diane Abbott should be doing that because, like I say, they're making things worse. And it is down to, if she can't look at the world through a fair lens, if she's only looking at things through a racial lens, then it's problematic for her job, and she maybe needs to consider her position.
Well, I'd rather not think she's being calculating or malicious, but it's very difficult not to see it like that because she's not an unintelligent woman. She must know how irresponsible it is, and she must also, it's hypocrisy, isn't it? Because if I were to take a crime and immediately make a racial connection to that crime with no evidence, she would probably be one of the first people to call me a racist.
Exactly. We should always wait for the evidence. The police hadn't even started investigating by the time Diane Abbott announced that it was something to do with her activism. And, I want to be charitable and think, she's looking at this through concern and it's not malicious, like you say, but she doubled down and she said we shouldn't attack a person of color for raising issues to do with race. And again, no one's attacking Diane Abbott for raising issues to do with race. We're attacking her for conflating points and making a political point out of someone getting shot. And that's not acceptable in any way, shape or form. It's playing politics with a horrific incident. And she should offer condolences, or she should pray, or she should, reach out to the family. But to use it as a party political narrative is inappropriate.
And let's not forget, of course, that she's got form doing this. I don't know if you'll remember, in 2012, I found the tweet that I was referencing at the start of the show where she said, white people love playing divide and rule. We should not play their game. So she was forced to apologise for sending that tweet. So she's clearly aware of the damage of gross negative generalisations, which are racism when you're directing them at a race.
Well, indeed. And we tolerate racism too much in this country if it's coming from the left and if it's coming from a person of ethnic minority status. If someone who was white had said that and replaced the word with black, it would have been outrage up and down the country. For someone like Diane Abbott to say that and get away with it, I know she had to apologize, but still, she's still in the Houses of Parliament. She's still representing people in this country. I think it's ridiculous. And we need to stand up to racism more, especially when it comes from the hard left, and especially when it comes from people of ethnic minority status, because we want equality in this country. We don't want special status for special demographic groups. We want everyone to be treated the same. And if something's wrong for someone to say it, it should be wrong for everyone to say it. That's my stance on this.
And do you think that there is a habit perhaps forming by some people on the left, or some people that are claiming to fight racism? Because I was, again, referencing at the start of the show that I'm reminded of the incident last summer when Dawn Butler was with a friend and was pulled over, and I don't know if you remember it, but the police had entered the registration of the vehicle that she was travelling in and entered I think one of the digits wrong, so therefore the location of the vehicle came up as having been nowhere near where she was driving in it, where she was a passenger in it rather. So they chose to pull it over, and immediately it was racial profiling before anything else had been said, before the police had even had a chance to respond. And it's really easy. You know, I just want to live in a nice society, you know, and I want racism to be pointed out where it is. I think it's really important it's pointed out where it is. But what I don't want is a society where people almost use it in order to make political points or further themselves, or perhaps see it where it doesn't exist. And it's really difficult not to see that people in that incident are doing just that.
Exactly. I remember that Dawn Butler incident, and she never did clarify the situation, did she?
Well, I was looking. I've not seen any update on that since it happened.
She put bits of clips out, and she reversed the footage. And you could see from the get-go, she was very excited to have been stopped by the police. She wasn't mad, she wasn't upset, she was excited to have an opportunity to call our police officers racist. That's first and foremost, that's race baiting, that's wrong. But secondly, she manipulated the information. So she flipped the camera footage around. We could see that it's clearly flipped. So she wasn't actually driving. And it turns out that the person driving might not have been black. Therefore, it wasn't racial profiling. So she's race baiting the whole way through in order to prove political points, in order to prove that our police force is institutionally racist, that our country is systemically racist, and everyone is out to get her because she's black. And that's not the case.
But why do some people want to do that, do you think? What is the objective? If this is some sort of race baiting by the left, as you put it, what is the major objective here?
It's just bias. It's just proof. In their minds, they believe these things. They believe that this country is racist. Therefore, they're looking for evidence. They're not waiting for
confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias 100%. And they're looking to prove that they are right. And they want to show people so badly that they're right, that they are inventing these racist situations. You know, all these people
I have a little sympathy for that. I agree with what you're saying. I have a little sympathy from the point of view that again, I'm not someone who is non-white, clearly, but as you know, the closest reference I have to this, and I probably will get some stick for bringing it up, is as a gay man. And when you are someone who I think has...
You've never mentioned that before, Krista.
I never mentioned it. It's very, very well kept secret, Calvin. I'm sorry to shock you. But, you know, I think when you are someone who has experienced something like homophobia, for instance, sometimes it is tempting when something negative happens to you. I didn't get that job. I was pulled over by the police. You know, that person bumped into me. I mean, you can almost make it consume you. Well, that's homophobia. There's homophobia there. And I didn't get that job because of homophobia. And I didn't get that promotion because of homophobia. And so I've some sympathy for people who fall into that trap a little, trying to be understanding. But it is your choice to fall into that trap. I mean, again, you as a mixed race man, you have experienced racism, and I guess there may have been times, I don't want to put words into your mouth, where perhaps you have been tempted to think, oh, that was racist, and maybe you have to check yourself sometimes.
Well, I mean, I've experienced racism on this very show, and what's funny is I was watching some footage of Sasha Johnson herself when she was at her most toxic, racially abusing another black person, and who was stood next to her but Ken Hines, the very man himself. I'd forgotten all about that.
Yes.
But the problem is with these race baiters and these race hustlers, the people that, so not only are they stuck in a system of, a lot of them are making money from perpetuating the myth that this country is racist. People are selling books, people are appearing on TV, making a living out of, in academia, certain professors are claiming that this country is racist and that white people are inherently racist. But not only is there that malicious side of it, it's also the worst thing is a lot of people are just stuck in a victimhood mentality, that they genuinely believe that if they don't achieve something, if they don't reach success, if they don't get what they want in life, it is down to the color of their skin or whatever immutable characteristics.
It's got to be something else. It can't be because I just wasn't good enough for the job. It can't be. There's
no personal responsibility.
Yeah, I get
That's the problem. Take ownership for your lives. Reach for the top and try and get it. Work hard to get it. Don't just sit there and think, I'm not where I want to be and it must be someone else's fault or society's fault. Everyone's racist. Everyone's out to get me. That is not a good mentality to be stuck in. Even if this country was racist, and it's not, that would not help you. You've got to reach above that and reach beyond that. And that's the only way we can get out of this ghettoization of black people must be oppressed because white people are in the positions of power, which is even not true in this country anymore.
That is actually very good advice, I think, for anyone who has ever in their lives experienced any prejudice. I mean, that could count for anyone who's experienced prejudice based on their sexual orientation, their identified gender, whatever it might be, where you've experienced prejudice, your race, anything else. It's really good advice, isn't it, to sort of try and get yourself out of that victimhood mentality, because I think it's easy for some people to slip into it, and it's even easier, and this is where I think all the dots are joined up, when you've got people who trade off it. When you've got people in the media saying, no, everything's homophobia, everything's racism, everything's sexism, then it's very easy when you perhaps fail in your life to hang your coat on that hook, isn't it?
And we always should return to the evidence. We should be evidence informed in all of these things that we're trying to, when we're trying to improve society, we're trying to make this country a better place for everybody. So we need to look at the data and the stats. And if we see a racial disparity, we need to say what's going on in this situation. Is there racism going on there? That should be the first question, not how is this situation racist, but is this racist? And if it isn't, look at what else is going on. Quite often in this country, class has a bigger factor to play in people's lives. And people make all kinds of assumptions and blame racism for lots of situations where it could be class, it could be wealth, it could be geography, it could be the postcode lottery, it could be all kinds of things. We need to actually take a step back from our own personal lived experiences, our own personal my truths, and look at situations with an objective viewpoint.
No, I get it, Calvin. Really interesting, and really interesting to talk about the sort of wider victimhood mentality picture, I think, that this is giving us in society. Calvin Robinson, conservative commentator, thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight here on Talk Radio. So do you think that this is part of a wider problem? And this isn't just about race, but it's about people who experience prejudice that perhaps immediately have a knee-jerk reaction to seeing prejudice where it doesn't exist, whatever that prejudice may be. And do you think that actually that's making society more divided by doing that?